Sharing. Hey, everybody. What is going on? Welcome to Awaken Your Work Life. I am Julie Murphy, and it is time for you to awaken your personal wealth. Why? Because you deserve it. You deserve to have the work life and the family life and the personal life that you really, truly desire, which then results in the money coming to you. Otherwise, the money slips through your fingers. And my friend Karen here helps people along their journey on their work life because I'm the money chick, she's the work chick. And so I don't actually know if you go by chick, but hope you don't mind.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I know how you meant it.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. It's time for all of our beautiful souls to really scream who we are in the world and express it in the work that we do so that we stop doing it just for the paycheck. Because I got to tell you, there's a lot of people that love the paycheck, but they hate the job, which actually then inadvertently creates disease in your body over time. And then you never wind up getting your golden years because you didn't create the happiness all along the way. You know? But we're so afraid to change it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're so afraid to jump in and take a look. This is classic. I feel like a little bit like a broken record, but at the end of the day, all this keeps coming back down to your truth. Right? It's like
true.
the title of today's talk is if you're afraid, if you don't like it, why are you afraid to change? And that's, you got to look at it.
You do have to look at it. It's like, look at it in the mirror. So many of us know that we're not happy in our jobs, which is why so many of us felt such a relief when we had to work from home.
Yeah.
Because then at least if you got a huge sigh of relief when everything shut down because you're like, oh, I don't have to drive or commute to that.
Yeah, that's a clue.
I gotta do that. That is the telltale sign.
It is. It's a clue.
It needs to change. But you need to love yourself enough to make that change.
Yeah, Julie, what happens, I think sometimes, and you guys all know what I'm talking about, we feel like it's the mature thing to do. You got a good job. Why would you risk changing? You're one of the fortunate ones, so just suck it up.
Well, just take that in the state of Illinois, right? Everyone's like, oh, but why would you do that because of pension? I hate to tell you, in the next 20 years, your pension is going to look nothing like what your pension looks like today.
Yeah.
So you're going to wake up one day thinking that you did your blood, sweat, and tears for this pension plan that is never going to be your reality.
That's not fully funded.
All fiscally screwed up right now. And it has to change. And it will change.
Yeah.
Because it's not in right alignment.
No, and it's we stop dreaming, it seems.
Oh, I know.
As young people. And we get so serious. We get married and we've got to buy our house or condo and we're going to have kids and we have to be grown-ups for them. And I remember, I'm going to tell you a story. I remember my daughter might have been 11 or 12 and I was driving them to work, to school one morning. And I was like, oh, this traffic. And she says, don't worry, Mom. In just a few years, I'll be able to drive me and Nick. And it hit me oh my God. Yeah, that's around the corner. And I could see the milestones in their life.
Right.
But I was like, what has the last 12 years been? And I love being a mom. There's no, I'm not saying that wasn't time, some of the most precious time I've ever spent, but I also think it's really important to understand how to feed yourself and to not lose sight of your dreams at every stage. And that's when it really hit me oh my God, the last 12 years from my perspective are a complete blur.
Right.
I feel no major milestones. I feel nothing that I was no, I cannot proceed this way. And so it doesn't have to be something huge.
Yeah,
it can be something small.
It's we spend our time slowly dying. It's you're just in the rut, you're doing the rut, and you're sticking there. I had a 72-year-old client who his wife had passed, and he was yeah, well, the money's for the kids. And I'm come on, isn't there anything that you want to do? Like he was just settling into retirement, like checking the boxes until he died. And I go, come on. And one day I saw this smirk on his face and I go, what's the smirk about? And he goes, you know, I always wanted to go to law school, but she got pregnant right after we got married. And then we had 5 kids and, you know, I just did a good job being a provider. And I go, well, don't you think after all these years, it's time for you? He goes, what do you mean? I go, go to law school. He's like, I'm not going to law school. And I was like, well, I don't want to be a lawyer, but it sure made you smirk. I go, come on. So I would tease him every time he'd come in and I'd be like, dude, when are you going to law school? When are you taking the LSAT? He's like, Julie, I'm not taking the LSAT. One day he walked in with his acceptance letter to law school and he practiced law until he was 85 years old.
That's awesome.
And I swear to God, that added all those years to that man's life because he got to fulfill something that he always wondered if he could do, but he didn't because he became the dad and he was a great provider. And you know what? Think about what he taught his grandkids in that process. That no matter what age or season of life that you're in, it's all about just having the courage to go outside of the norm and stop being afraid. Fear is rampant in our society right now, like rampant. Yeah, we gotta stop giving that energy.
Yeah, you know, I did a post the other day about fear and how unless there is an imminent life or death threat, your fear is a plea, it's a cry for conversation, internal conversation. It's asking you to explore something that is not in alignment. And the way it had to get your attention was by scaring you. I got to scare the out of you to get your attention to deal with this subject.
Right.
And the thing is that once you shine a light on it, it starts to diminish.
Oh, it completely diminishes.
You know, so every fear that you think is valid, when you really start to explore it, you discover, oh, you know what? Maybe that's not quite so awful a thing to have to deal with.
What we've created it to be up here.
Yeah.
Our noodles like really jam us up and block us from what our heart really desires.
Yeah.
Because our brain hasn't figured out the how to get there. So it stalls us from actually making the decision, as opposed to saying, you know what, I am going to make a change. I'm not really sure of the steps, but I'm going to make the change. Yeah. And that's the step in my PACT process that I talk about, that you choose to change. You know, it's the third step. Like, let's make the choice of how I want to live my life and what's the work I want to do in the world. How do I want to serve, you know, society in the work that I do? And what kind of coworkers do I want to have? And what kind of boss do I want to have? Or do you want to be your own boss? Like, it's like, let's unpack it, you know?
Yeah, there's you know, your power is right behind whatever that fear is.
Right.
It's standing right behind there. And, you know, I want people to understand how important it is to look at it, to look at your truth. You know, today is about, like, if you don't like it, examine that. What don't you like? What is not serving you? What is not fitting? It's not enough to just complain and blame and I don't like my boss, or they don't pay me enough, or like, that's not enough. You can't stop there. You have to push to that next level. What would I prefer?
Yep.
What would I prefer? You know?
Yep. And know that what you prefer today may not be what you preferred or how you were expected to show up before. Right? Like, I was that good Irish Catholic girl that always fell in line, did everything that was expected of her, and showed up in spades, and everybody was very happy with me. The problem was I wasn't happy. And then, you know, I remember, you know, I was proud of myself. I always thought I was going to be an accountant. And then when I went to college, I was like, oh God, I am not an accountant. And I realized finance was my thing. And my dad was just like, why aren't you going to be an accountant? That's a good job. And I'm like, I remember like having to step out of going, but I just need to go finance. And then I'm showing up, at the financial firms and going, you're not wearing a blue suit. I'm like, oh God, you got to buy a blue suit? What? And then I'm like, oh, I couldn't do that either, And then it was just like, oh, I didn't fit into that. And then when I moved my office, I finally left the big financial firm in 2003 and said, I am never wearing a suit ever because I don't do suits. Like, it's just, to me, it's a masculine thing, not a feminine thing. But my industry was like, you fit in this.
Yeah.
Right? We all are told to fit in the box.
Yeah. And what I'd love to point out for the folks watching is that what you did was you paid attention to what didn't feel right. Right? Like I don't like the suit. I'm not sure accounting's right. But you didn't settle. You didn't settle for mediocrity. You didn't settle for like what was handed to you. Like, I'm not living, the Oliver story here. This is, and that's what we all have available to us.
Right.
It's to pay attention to what's not serving you. Like, what doesn't fit anymore? Why this doesn't feel good?
Right.
What do I think I would prefer? And when you answer that, you open a doorway to other possibilities. So the thing is, like, rarely are we really trapped. Now, what I'm saying, I'm not saying that it's not going to, whatever we decide we want to do is not going to require some elbow grease, right? Like, I'm not saying this is without effort, like there's work that might need to go into whatever your dream is, right? But, oh, it's so much more fun when you're doing something that like is speaking to you, right?
Well, like, I don't want people to think that, oh, well, Julie could do it, 𝐾𝐮 can do it, but my situation, I just can't. I'm just going to call baloney on that one, because you know what? I started my own business when I was 22 years old. I was one of 12 children. I didn't have a pot to piss in, pardon my French. But I figured, what's my worst case scenario? I'm going to go back to eating fried bologna and macaroni and cheese, because I knew I was never going back to that. Never. Right? So it was like, people are like, how are you starting your own business? I'm going, well, I'm not going to eat fried bologna and mac and cheese ever again. I just figured it out. It's about trusting yourself and trusting that inner knowing, like knowing that I didn't want to wear the blue suit. Like, did I wear the blue suit for a few years? Yeah, unfortunately, I wore the blue suit.
We all did.
We did. And it's like, now, and it just, you have to know that that's like building a muscle.
Yeah.
Right? When you take the first step to go, I'm not okay with this, I'm ready to shift it. Because some of you may be very comfortable in 6-figure jobs. You're going, well, I don't know if I can replace the 6 figures. I just had a client who was here in Chicago making $1.8 million a year in income, grew up on food stamps. So completely built himself up, but then had the opportunity to go, I would call it, sell his soul and work in New York City and make $3 million a year, or go follow his heart and make 800 grand a year. And I know a lot of people watching be like, oh God, I would just love for that option, 800 versus 3 million. But whatever your income level is, to shift from something to something else to follow your heart, sometimes, we pause because we get stuck in our lifestyles. And sometimes that's part of the fear, going, well, you know what? I then totally, have to reduce my lifestyle. And what about the debt that I've created? And what about, all these other components that are definitely real issues. But we really have to look at why are, I see people who make a lot of income and they're spending all that income because they're not happy, and they're trying to spend to create their happiness.
Yeah. And it's,
sorry, go ahead.
The thing is that you're talking about like people feeling afraid. There's that fear again of what they might lose.
Yeah.
And it's classic. We're trained to, like, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, right? Like, what you already have, like, don't discount that. Be grateful for what you have.
Yep.
And we're not saying not to be grateful for what you've created. There's a way to dream, go for your dream, and to do it in incremental steps.
Right. Yeah. Walk it across the bridge.
and to take your time, like to plan for it. And even if you're in a wage earning role right now, like there's so many examples of people who, yourself included, may have come from a very modest upbringing, right? It takes research. Like I said, you got to have some skin in the game. Take some research, ask some questions, but be willing to like write the letter to somebody that you might want to intern for, or write to ask them if they'd be willing to have a 10-minute conversation about how they got to where they are. Totally. Like you have to be the commander and the leader of your own dream. And if you'd rather just be like, whatever, if it comes to me, it comes to me. Okay. But then you're not allowed to complain.
Because you are then the person creating the suffering pattern.
Limitation. Yep.
And you have to decide to choose we have to remember our thoughts, our words, and our emotions are all the vibration that we're putting out in the world that then vibrates and comes back to you. And it's super important for us to recognize that you are a creator and you are part of the process. So we can't ignore that you're a piece of that, but you can't complain if you're not going to do something about it.
Well, and even no action is a choice.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know a lot of women who are like ostriches and stick their head in the sand. It's like they talk about, I want to make more money at my job. I want this. I want the promotion. And this guy got it. And I know a ton of women that do that. But how many times have they walked into their boss and said, you know what, I'm worth a $20,000 raise. And here are the reasons why.
Yep.
It is 1 out of 10 women that do that compared to men.
Yeah.
At least in the finance field, that's what it is.
Well, and a lot of people may have a lot of fear around like approaching their boss about it. But here's the thing. Again, there are like 5+ paths to what you just suggested.
Yep.
The first and most important piece, though, is to collect the evidence that you are deserving.
Right.
Like keep a journal of the things you help create or do. Keep a journal of when people give you compliments. Keep a journal of like when you nailed it.
Right.
Keep all of that stuff, because when it comes time, if you're working for somebody else and it's year end, and it's time for your review, I promise you, your boss is not nearly as up to speed on everything you've done as you are. Like you are the one that has to say, hold up, wait a minute. I want to lay out what this last year has looked like and what I contributed to and because they're not, most of us, right? And again, out there, I know many of you may have had to do this, have had to write their own reviews.
That's so true.
How many times has your boss been like, hey, bring a recap of all your accomplishments for the year? Like, what? Like, all right, fine. Here's my encyclopedia.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So keep the journal, keep the file folder with all those pieces in there.
Yep.
Not only that, that's a great exercise to also to create a situation like that is the most self-loving and self-caring as well, right? Because you're showing that you're worthy and that you're enough. And those are 2 of the triggers that cause us not to have the courage to step forward, but to stay in our fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an exercise that, to your point, builds a muscle and builds your spine. Like everybody has a tendency to talk about be confident. And I'm like,
that's the ego mind.
And the other thing is that like, there's that phrase, fake it till you make it. Like, oh man, that is the biggest contributor to the imposter syndrome that I can think of, because you're faking it.
Right.
So no wonder you feel like an imposter.
Well, it just reinforces the not enough and I'm not worthy.
So
and then it creates debt in the same time. So actually it perpetuates your suffering cycles.
Yeah. So just write it down. Write down like when you've got every win, write it down. And when you go back and you review that, you're going to see like, oh, because you won't even remember some of the stuff you did.
Right.
Like when I go back in some of my journals, I'm like, oh, I didn't remember that. Oh, did I write that? Oh, that was pretty good. You lose track. We can't keep
Yeah.
up with everything that we're doing, but it's worth keeping track because
Yeah.
your boss is not keeping their eye on you like that.
No.
You're not. You have to do it. You have to do it for them.
Totally. That's so true. So, so true. And it's really about asking yourself the questions of what's true for you today. Like we really have to stop bringing our past forward with us because that's irrelevant.
Yeah, and if we think that we're not supposed to, like, you graduate from college and then all of a sudden you're like, that's it for the growing, that's it for the
Yep.
evolving, that's it for the dream casting, that's it for the aspirations. Like, no, that can't be right.
Totally.
And I honestly, for those of us out there crossing the 40 or 50-year mark, like
Who's
you
that?
haven't even you haven't even stepped into your power until you cross 40 or 50. You don't even, like, really,
Valid
because
point.
your discernment gets stronger, your understanding of your skill sets and what you like and don't like and want and don't want, and you can focus in a way that perhaps you couldn't before you learned all that stuff.
So true. It's so true. And what I have found is that the money always follows when you start to step into that space.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to remember money is energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you energize the things that you want to be or create in your life, the money's just the result of it.
Yeah.
But people always are chasing the money first and they think about the other stuff afterwards. And I'm like going, that's backwards.
Yeah, and it's empty.
Absolutely backwards.
And then they wonder about why their dream loses steam.
Right.
Like, why?
The wrong engine driving the train.
The wrong motivation, the wrong engine, the wrong aspiration.
Right.
Money for the sake of money is like, whatever. The number could be 100,000, it could be 100 million, like, whatever.
Right.
But if it's tied to, wow, I've always wanted to do that, or I feel like I want to take a stand for this in the world,
Yep.
or I've always wanted to work with these kinds of people or on this issue, that's completely different.
Right. Right. And understand that, we're talking about like finding the courage to take that next right step for you to not be afraid any longer. We need to recognize that as you go on that journey, that you will have those of you who are around you going, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you shifting? What are you doing? Like, and we have to just be as much in the state of being the observer of that instead of the reactor, because of the fact that they feel more comfortable with you staying where you're at because they don't have the courage to shift their lives yet. Even though you're starting to get an inkling of saying, I got to change. So just it's about staying in a place of recognizing that, going, that's interesting that they like told me all the reasons why I shouldn't do this. So just look at it and go, yeah, but I'm not going to drink that juice. I just don't go there.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit maybe last week, even like the idea of protecting your dreams.
Right.
Here's the thing, when you do your inventory, and that's what I'm going to call it, of like what I like and don't like about the job I'm in or the career I'm in or what I think I want to do, when you do that inventory, no one else has to see it until you're ready, if and when you're ready to share it. But you need to do it.
Right.
You need to know what's true for you. And in doing that, you can then take action from that space. And then quite frankly, you don't actually do your investigation, do your digging, do your understanding, create a plan, right? Create your plan for how you want to go from where you are to where you want to go. And then maybe, you share it with the people around you so that they can, because often people will naysay your dream because they think they're protecting you.
Correct. Yeah,
You
that's
know?
what we were talking about last week, that they want to protect you and they think they're doing well by that, and they're not.
Yeah. So just find a community. You should have collaborators, somebody that you can exchange ideas with, but it doesn't have to be your immediate family.
Love the community that you're building on Thursdays. Can you tell people about that? Because I think that's super important as a resource and community for people to get to help to support, to create the work life that you desire.
Yeah. So I host every Thursday I call it a mini workshop at noon Central Time. There's a Zoom, it's a Zoom meeting. There are links on the Beyond Blind Spots Facebook page as well as on the Instagram page. Feel free to DM me if you can't find it for some reason. But yeah, the whole idea there is to create a space where people can feel safe to explore ideas and to navigate through this window that we're in, to discover their truth.
Right.
At the bottom of all things really is truth. I even wear
your
this
own truth.
Yeah.
Not the truth of the country, not the truth of your communities, not the truth of your family, your personal truth without you projecting it onto everybody else.
Correct.
Like, this is inside.
Yep. I was going to say I have a little intention bracelet that says truth and love. And I've been wearing it for over a year because as a reminder, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. It's what's true for you.
Right.
What's true. How you navigate that is completely up to you as well. But yeah.
And I think it's important that to pull in something from my Awaken series on Awaken Your Relationships, the Rita Hickman, who I use on that one, when we don't feel safe, you said in one of the words, safe. It's a place to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go to places, like let's say you wind up in a scenario where somebody triggers you and then you feel unsafe and you're like questioning why you're doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. One of the greatest tools to get your nervous system to ground again is called havening. And all you do is you put your arms on your shoulder and you go down 20 times. There's something about this physical touch, and it's called havening, that if you find you're talking about your work life and somebody completely triggers you and now you're in that conversation back and forth, kind of like how politics has been lately, which we're not going to go there because we're all going to be havening after that. But this is a really good way to actually regulate your nervous system, because
interesting.
Our nervous systems actually get jacked because of our traumas from our childhoods, like whatever that experience you have. Some people have terrible traumas, some people's not so terrible, but all of those experiences actually have been built up on our nervous system that actually deregulate us. And even if it's like somebody in your work life that you get off that business call and you're like, oh my God, regulate your own nervous system.
Yeah. And it's really interesting with that move, because, energetically, there's also this idea of like clearing the space around you. So I can see like both the physical as well as like the energetic, like shake it off.
Yeah. Like here's another one that's good. So maybe you're in a business meeting and if you start rubbing yourself, people might like, Julie's in business meetings and she's just rubbing herself down. No. So another one is just take your one ankle and put it over your one knee. And then you have one hand on one knee and the other one on your ankle. That also, so you can very easily do this sitting at a desk. And that actually is another piece from a physiological perspective that regulates your nervous system.
So interesting, because, it's one of those positions that I recognize I've used in the past. Like,
well, how many people are sitting in a board meeting and they sit and they cross their legs?
Yeah.
It's something about, so what you're doing is you're integrating your right and your left brain, because you're crossing, whether it's your arms or your legs. That's a natural integration. And then it's about the hands, whether it's doing this or one on the knee and one on the ankle of the other foot.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And both of those things can regulate your nervous system, because as you're going through the potential of transitioning these things, we have to put these things in place that when you fall off the horse, because you will, right? I've fallen off the horse multiple times. Thank God I've not gotten any concussions. But your nervous system will get hijacked again, right? So it's kind of like when I chose to move from the south side to the north side, all of a sudden it was like I lived in China. I was like, stop, stop. I just want a new adventure in life. That was all, right? And I really try to frame that if you really desire to move into a new place in your work life, like it's just the next adventure. Think of it as an adventure. Like, how would a 7-year-old little girl or boy think of that, next adventure without going, but what about my electric bill? What about my credit card bills? What about my student loan bills, my car payment, and my blah, 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 blah. Like, we can bring up all these things that derail us from walking across the bridge to the new life that we truly want to create for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, there's that phrase, cutting yourself off at the knees. Like when you go to the butts before you've given enough time to just the daydream or the vision or the whatever.
Totally.
Yeah. It's so easy to find all the reasons not to.
Right. Why do you think people are the most afraid to not take that next right step?
Because we have been led to believe that we need to know how everything is going to turn out. We need to control. We need to control. And some of that control comes with prediction. Like, can I predict? And when you get into a groove or a routine, it feels predictable. It feels like everything's going to be great. Like, I know how to handle it. It's like when you drive your route to work.
Right.
And people, why do the most accidents happen within a mile of somebody's home? Because they're tuned off.
That's so true.
They're not aware. They're like on automatic pilot. And you look up and you're like, oh, I didn't even I wasn't paying attention to that because I'm so used to like my car driving itself home, And so I think we're afraid because we think we need to know.
Right.
In order to guarantee the outcome that we want.
Right.
And we're not trained or encouraged to understand how to operate without certainty.
True.
And the truth is, you and I both know that actually we don't control anything except our response to something.
It's control.
Yeah. And that even though we think because 150,000 times before this and this resulted in that the next time it's going to, but what happens if it doesn't?
Right.
And my clients, I've shared with them, I'm like, here's the thing. I want you to think about in your life, and those of you listening to us, think about in your life, how many times something came out of left field, something you didn't expect. How you got through it. It might have been messy, might have been kind of bumbly or ugly, but you got through it. Maybe you sailed through it. Right. But the truth is, here you are today, past whatever that thing was. And you didn't even see it coming, but there it was, and you had to deal with it. That is your truth.
Right.
When something shows up unexpected, you're going to use whatever the tools are in front of you, whatever you have access to get you through it. That's all you need to know. You already have everything you need to navigate whatever comes up, and what you don't have, you'll ask for help, or you'll get help, or you'll find help, or you'll figure it out.
That's so true. And that's where the magic is. Yep. Right? Like, that's what we need to take from the children of the world right now, is to find the magic again. Because it brings on the giggle. Like, kids don't really worry about what adults worry about. And it all seems to still work out for them. But when we stop following our heart and we let our minds negotiate ourselves away, that's where all the derailing happens. And it's not that you don't use your smarts. You just start with your heart first.
Yeah.
And then you use your smarts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like my daughter this morning, she's like, well, Mom, I don't really want to do that for school. And I'm like, well, you need to do it for school. But what way is going to make you giggle the most? And she's like, I have a choice. My kids go to private school. So there's a lot of fall in line kind of conversation.
Yeah.
And she's like, I go, because I want them to come from a place of empowerment, you know, and often because we've allowed money and the lifestyles we're living and the debts that we've created dictate whether or not we're doing the work in the world that we want to do or don't do, because we've pigeonholed ourselves into a lifestyle and we don't know how to get out of it. And so it's time for us to start to shift that, to go to a place of empowerment, to make choices. You know, like I always tell people, like from a financial perspective, go look at all those automatic payments that are happening on your credit card. And do you even want those today?
Yeah.
Every client I do that with
finds something.
Finds about anywhere between $100 and $300.
I was going to say easily 100.
Easily. Because yeah, they were important to you a year ago, but right now they're still all billing to your credit card.
Yeah.
And it's like, there is some space there then, right? That now I can take a job for $3,600 less a year that I'm more happy at. Like, this is the way I want people to start to shift their mind frame on their jobs.
Yeah.
You know, I've had some people move from a 15-year mortgage to a 30-year mortgage because it reduced their payment. And then they could take a job that they really, truly desired more.
Yep.
And they could, you know, they could reduce it by 20 grand a year because they didn't need it anymore because we readjusted their mortgage or whatever.
Yeah. The point.
There's always a way.
Yeah. The point that you're making is that, like, you got to hold on to your dream and then brainstorm your way around how to get there.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, you are only going to know a fraction of the possible ways that you can get there, but you have to be willing. You know, here's the thing, Julie, disappointment hurts, right? I think a lot of people are also afraid of the pain that comes with things not working out. And that is a personal choice that each of us has to make. Like, am I willing to continue with mediocrity or what's okay?
But aren't you still disappointed?
I don't want the risk of maybe this not working the way exactly I wanted and the pain that's going to come with that. That is a personal decision, choice, whatever. But here's the thing, like, what do you want to really live with that question mark?
Well, I think disappointment will come in either package.
Either way. Yeah, it has
if you ignore your heart's desired.
For sure, you're going to feel it.
65 years old, looking at retirement, you're going to look back at your life and go, why did I put up with that for so long?
Yep. For sure, you're going to feel it.
Like, so it's a delayed decision that eventually smacks you right in the forehead. Whether you're disappointed today.
Here's a way to think about what you're talking about. It's like,
bring it on.
Exactly. No, it's exactly that. Like, you can have the disappointment hit you like a boulder in 10 years.
Or a bunch of pebbles.
Bunch of pebbles today.
Analogy.
Little pebbles that you can like bob and weave, you know, like, or if it hits you, like a grain of sand as opposed to a whopper.
Is it really, I mean, really, Karen, it really doesn't come in a different package.
No. It's
just the intensity of the package.
And you can miss some of it. Actually, you could potentially miss a lot of it. Yeah. Because you're following your truth. Here's the thing, the heart always knows.
Oh, always knows. We just haven't trusted it yet.
So if you're drawn to something, the heart knows that's a yes. Now, how you do it, what level, what it's about, blah, blah, blah.
That will come after you choose.
But the heart always knows. And there's an echo of that if you don't choose it. That echo lives. It like gets into your cell tissue. It plants itself there. It's like a ghost of possibility.
Well, those unprocessed emotions actually physically crystallize inside your body And the build up of that crystallization of those unprocessed emotions create disease in your body, which is why 50% of my male clients between 55 and 65 years old have developed cancer right around their hip area.
Mm-hmm.
And it all had to do with their work life. They were all, every single one of them, when I looked back, why did that happen to them? Because Deepak Chopra says that a cancer cell develops because that cell has lost its sense of purpose.
Mm.
And I kept asking, like, how did they lose their sense of purpose? They were all dropped by their jobs, not by their choice.
Mm.
They had raised their families, gave up at the cost of their souls to do this job for a paycheck to provide for their families. And then their companies were like, sorry, we're moving on. We're transitioning. We're changing because you didn't transition and change and do it yourself.
Yeah.
Then the universe did it for you.
There's the boulder.
Boom. I had a friend of mine. She was told, unless you have a severe shift in your personality, you're never going to be partner at this accounting firm. She gave them 24 years of her young work life, never married, never anything, worked her ass off, and she got the boulder. She's super happy now with what she's doing. She's a controller in the healthcare system, but it's a completely different thing than working inside of an accounting firm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is what we're trying to share with people today, right? Is that you are the, captain of your happiness, of the quality of your life and your experience, and that you are already getting signals. You have gotten them and you continue to get signals when something needs to change.
Yep.
And we're inviting you, and come back and see us, send us questions in advance. We're inviting you to learn what you can do, how you can navigate that, what you can do to be in your life with a higher quality of life. That's what we're talking about, is the quality of your life.
Yep.
So, these stories show up, and every one of us has an example of, somebody we know that did something for a long time. It was like, okay, I did it. And for noble reasons, right? Like, I did it for my family, or I did it to protect this. And all we're saying is that there are other ways to protect your family, potentially. There are other ways to show up.
And not forget about your heart and soul in the process.
Correct. There is a way.
We've negotiated ourselves away for years.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like in the work that I do, I tell people you have a code, soul code, business code, work code, how you're meant to express yourself in the world code that you're born with. And the best thing we can do is to rediscover what that is.
Totally.
And so, there's so many ways that it can be expressed in the world. Like, there's not just one way to express your gifts and talents. Let's explore what that is. Let's take a look at it. Let's play with that.
Yep.
Because it's not too late.
Well, so all of you, please join Karen on her Thursdays to have that safe place for you to start to play more in your work arena and find what that next right step is for you. And just go to Beyond Blind Spots, and the links are all there. Yep. I'll have my team put the links below as well, so that it'll be easy for everyone to access. And don't forget to go to 𝑗ulieMurphy.com, because next week, it's officially next week, Karen. This has been in the process. It's officially next week. We got all the confirmations happening. I am giving away a free copy of my book. You just have to pay for your own shipping to get it. Awaken Your Wealth, because it's time for us to all live from this place of true happiness, which I call real wealth, which attracts the money that you want to have in your life when you're living from a place in your work life, your family life, your relationships, your personal life, from the inside out. It's no longer from the outside in. It's from the inside out. So go to JulieMurphy.com and give me your email address, so that when it goes on next week, you'll be alerted when you can get your free book.
Get the book.
Lauren, and we'll see you
always
next week.
See you guys next week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.